headphone is on. You guys can clearly hear me.
Yeah, sir, your audio is clear.
Visible.
Yeah, video is visible, slightly blur maybe.
Yeah, because I've turned on the blur mode.
Okay,
so what we'll do is we'll give people the next couple of minutes we have given them for the start of this. I'll also try to join from my laptop. I've joined from my iPad, but my presentation is on my laptop, which decided to crash on me, which always happens with Windows. But anyway, so I'll still be able to at least start the talk, and then I can show you a couple of slides. I can always talk through them even if I don't have the slides. Okay.
Sure, sir. Sure.
So let me know when to start, when all the people are on. I'll go back on mute.
Yes, sir. We will wait for just 2 or 3 minutes, then we'll start.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, although I did hear an echo.
Okay, sir. Now I think we should start.
Okay,
are you
perfect.
ready, sir?
Yeah, I'm absolutely ready. Let me turn on my video as well. I'm just trying to make sure that I do have a slide deck that I can share as well. So, maybe I'm joining in from another device as well. In the meanwhile, it's really nice to talk to the guys here. Let me see. We've got a bunch of folks join. I believe others will be joining in as well. Listen, my name is Shashank Jha, and I will introduce myself. I'm just checking if I can get a presentation.
Sir. Yes, sir. Please let us welcome you, sir. I mean,
sure. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Fine. So, good evening, everyone. I am Anupam Giri, Exploration and Progress Executive of EAGE RGIPT Student Chapter. Welcome you all to this insightful webinar on career opportunities in oil and gas industry and how to target off-campus placements. I'm so glad to share that we are joined by Dr. Amit Saxena, sir, with us in today's webinar. Dr. Amit Saxena is an assistant professor in the Department of Petroleum Engineering at Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Petroleum Technology, JAIST. He has done his BTech in Petrochemical Engineering from Aligarh Muslim University and completed his PhD from IIT ISM Dhanbad. He has also worked as an assistant professor at IIPE Vizag previously. Dr. Amit Saxena is an energetic man who always works on the latest technologies. He has utilized AI/ML tools in his latest publications in petroleum domain. Now, I would like to welcome him for further proceedings. Over to you, sir. Sir, your mic is off. Amit, sir.
Good evening, Shashank, sir.
Good evening, Amit.
It's an honor to welcome a senior, I would say, from ISM Dhanbad.
Really nice to see that you're from ISM Dhanbad as well. Really nice, Amit.
Yeah. So, sir, as I like to introduce you to other people, it's an honor to introduce. Shashank sir has been an executive business operations and country manager in India at Baker Hughes since 2017 or so. So he leads the Indian geo market for oilfield equipment business. With almost 2 decades of oilfield experience, he's spent almost 10 years at GE, and he has worked in field roles, project management from drilling, offshore. I've seen I was not in connect with him, but I've seen it. There's a whole load of things. So he has striking partnerships, clarity of thought, solution mindsets, and PL and all leadership qualities. He did his degree in petroleum engineering from IIT ISM Dhanbad and completed his MBA from IIM Bangalore. So top B schools. He started his career as a business analyst and later on switched to project manager at BG Group. Later he joined ECLP in GE Oil and Gas, from where he went on to be sales leader and director of subsea systems, country manager and subsea and drilling of India region. Today he is the country manager for oilfield equipment at Baker Hughes. So it's an honor that he tries to give back to the petroleum community this much. So he's on board for SP members for last 5 years. He talks at many technical forums. He's an advisor, consultant, and whatnot. He has a special interest in mentoring young people, and that's why he agreed on that same. So outside of work, Mr. Shashank actively volunteers in social impact initiatives. He has been elected as secretary for his 100+ cooperative society. So work and professional balance is also there. So he has been actively supported setting up a startup in the sustainable energy space called Ideas for Energy with his better counterpart, I would say, and which is doing pretty much good. So Mr. Shashank has a rare distinction for being the only person to receive 2 MVP awards for the South Asia region across all GE, ONG and PNLs for the subsea product company. So it's an honor and a privilege to have a introduction or interaction with him so that we can see what best our students can get out of him. So over to you, sir. A very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor. So, it's really nice always and always embarrassing because one, it makes you realize that you're getting old because, you can do so much only when you have a lot of time. So, hey, I was in the first, second, third year back in 96, 97, 98, right? And that is why it is all the more important that I love interacting with students because when we were students, the world was changing. And because the internet had just about started coming in, ISM had its first computer lab set up in 99, 2000. It would take us forever just to log in and set up an email account for that matter. Didn't really know what was going on. So even people who went on to do MS back then, 99, 2000, didn't really know what was going on in the world. a lot of you guys wouldn't know what was going on in the world because a lot of you wouldn't have been born around that time, right? So, and I see a bunch of you are here. It's always good to know what is going on, especially when you are in such a critical stage of your career. And that is one of the reasons where, it is always good to interact with people when you're students and good to interact with students when you become a people leader. So back in 96, 97, 98, the world was getting flip phones, right? So, Motorola used to have a big brick phone back then if you had a cell phone in the first place. Most of us were still used to talking to our families and, if you were lucky, your girlfriend or boyfriend on the hostel phone, which was a common single phone in the mess, and you would go and stand in line. If you needed to call home, you would call some neighbor who had a phone by standing in line on a PCO, public call booth. Whereas in the world, they were developing cell phone technology. Motorola and Nokia and BlackBerry were hiring people. In Stanford, there were people working on Google, right? Larry Page and these guys were a part of the master's program. Steve Jobs was hanging around there. The world was about to change. Mark Zuckerberg was nowhere in the picture. And imagine if we knew this is going to happen, right? Imagine if we knew back then when we were making career choices that 20 years down the line, there would be protests when people would use oil and gas. They would talk about global warming and the problems of hydrocarbons and why careers should move out. Instead of that, we would have possibly a lot of the youngsters would have chosen their careers in a different path. And I would show you, and if my computer allows me to, which it has been hanging for a while, I'll show you career tracks of some of my peers from back in the 90s and early 2000s to what they're doing now. It'll be instructive, because you can always look back and see what people have done. It's difficult to say right now that, if I can figure out a name, what a Ritesh or what a Tomika would do 20 years down the line. You can make your guess, right? You can make your guess, but it would be very difficult to say what the career would look like. For, in my case, for example, next month on the 2nd of January, I will take over as the CEO of one of Tata Group's listed companies, right? And I would be the first CEO from my batch, either from IIT or from IIM, right? First CEO, I would have never thought about that. I came from a very small town. I came from a small town where in my class there were barely 30 people, right? I was fortunate just to get into any of these colleges. I was fortunate to get a job. I really didn't enjoy studying that much, but I enjoyed the subjects I enjoyed, right? So the point is, if I had to put that pressure on myself when I was studying in ISM, which was not even IIT back then, it was ISM Dhanbad, I would think hey, kya ho gaya? I was such a topper and I couldn't get into IIT Kharagpur to do my computer science. So back then, IIT Kanpur, I could have done electrical engineering, I could have beat myself up. But then, hey, along the way, I came across a lot of people who had done that. I came across a lot of people who'd gone from IIT ISM into their dream colleges in the US, a bunch of batchmates in IIM who were from IITs, from computer science. But who knows where your career takes you, right? So who knew back then that 25 years down the line in 1997, I would possibly end up being the first guy from the batch to become the CEO of a listed company. I never planned that. What did I plan? What did I plan was that whatever opportunity comes my way, good or bad, I'll do a good job of it, right? And that's what you can do, What you are in is what you are in. There's no point complaining or there's no point gloating over it, right? What you've achieved is what you've achieved. Right now, all the 43 plus whatever people, some 55 odd people who are in here who are not professors are pretty much all on the same ground, as I would say. You have the same head start over everyone else who is not in the campus. And, if you might call it, you might have the same competitive disadvantage to someone, let's say, who's doing their undergrad in an MIT or a Harvard or somewhere else, right? So, all of you have the same, or maybe the same advantage, right? An advantage of knowing the Indian culture, the Indian languages, the Indian market better than a lot of people who are from saturated markets like Europe or Americas, right? The markets which are going to go slow over the years. So, what I'm not going to go and talk about right now, a lot of people do that, is talk about fancy stuff, jargons, right? When you go and talk to CEOs and country heads and big bosses of companies, they would talk about optimized modular concepts and some really fancy jargon, which loses people immediately. And you don't really understand what they're talking about. Frankly, what you want to understand is, boss, पढ़ाई कर रहा हूँ, पास करूँगा, पास करने के बाद नौकरी मिलेगी, नौकरी मिलने के बाद क्या होगा?
सुनेगा तो तेरे को काफी अच्छा लगेगा, तेरे ही जैसा है वो, मतलब जैसा तू बनना चाहता है वैसा ही। IIM बैंगलोर से उन्होंने
सॉरी फॉर द डिस्टर्बेंस सर।
नहीं, नो प्रॉब्लम, एज लॉन्ग एज मेरे जैसे ही बनना चाहता है तब तक कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। बट सारी बदमाशी मेरे जैसी नहीं करे तो ज्यादा अच्छा है। बट लिसन, so getting to the point, right? No point getting lost in the jargon. And what I'm going to do really is I'm going to talk to you about only a couple of things. One, how do you own your career? I'll talk about, and I was very nicely introduced by Professor, but I'll still talk about how I see my career when I look back at my career. And when you're not me, and when you look at my career, it appears a massive success story. But sometimes it's a bunch of failures which add up to become a big success. So you never know. Equansa setback is actually not a setback, and it's a big success, right? So that said, let me just take you to what my career and journey looked like to me. If you can see the slide here, this is what it looks like, right? So when I started my engineering, that was back in 1996, right? I was from a
Sir, just a minute, sir.
I'm on mute. Okay.
Yeah.
So
sir,
when
there was
you
some
mute,
settings change because of the disturbance. Sir,
yeah, okay.
The host was changing the settings. Unfortunately, it affected your slides.
No problem. Chalega. So can you
Is
see
it
my
fine?
slides here?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir. Everything is fine, sir.
You could not hear this slide, is it? No.
The middle part of some seconds.
Okay, cool. No, so hey, I will not repeat the entire thing. At the, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring myself back to the point in time where a lot of you guys currently are, right? In the beginning of your graduation, that is where you've got yourself in, through your hard work, through whatever got you here, right? A lot of you might not have actually planned to get into this college. A lot of you clearly would not have planned to get into anything to do with energy or oil and gas. A lot of you would not have even planned to study in India. A lot of you would have planned to study in Delhi. A lot of you would have actually planned to get into this campus because it was the best campus that you could find close to where you stay. There could be various reasons. There could be various reasons why you would want to study in this place. You could find various reasons later on when you succeed in your career why you were studying here. But back in my career, when I got into ISM, it was because I didn't get into IIT. Right? In 1996, ISM and IIT were two different examinations. And, I was fairly confident, maybe a very overconfident kid. So I was on the verge of not really giving the entrance examinations. Back then, there were many entrance examinations. There was IIT, there was ISM, there was Roorkee, there was, BIT, there was a bunch of other BIT Meshra. There was, unlike today, you had to give a lot of examinations to get in a lot of places. And I was a national talent search scholar. I was a topper in my school. I was super confident. And, what you call a Kupmandu, right? I was in a very small town, in a very small school where I was a topper. I thought that I was smarter than everyone else. Obviously, I wasn't. Right? So, and that happens when you meet a lot of people, then you realize, oh my God, I was not the smartest kid. There was a lot of smart people around there. It's very important to find out that there are a lot of smart people, right? So I found out the hard way when I got into my college that, listen, I was almost about not to give any other entrance examination. I had not even seen where ISM Dhanbad was, and I was only 26 kilometers away from it. And then when I got into ISM Dhanbad, just to prove to myself that I didn't get into IT because of a fluke, I went and gave the exam again. The exam got cancelled. Right? And it was back in 96, 97. I was having my first taste of failure, and I'm dwelling about it because you all will deal with failure at some point or the other in your life. And it's how you deal with it which defines how you then go on and become what you become in your life, right? So I went and gave the IIT exam again in 1997 because the guys I used to study with, they were, we had a small study group. There was no internet. There was no, there was brilliant tutorials and others, but everyone's parents were middle class. We didn't have money to go and send our kids to Delhi or Bombay to study. So we'd buy second-hand, training material. We would read from that and we would study. So a bunch of us studied together. One of them got into IIT Kharagpur in computer science, 175 rank. We were studying together. I didn't get in. So I was like, shit, I'm devastated. What do? I'm smarter than him. We are both national talent search scholars. Let me give the exam again. So in 97, I gave the IIT entrance again, right? It was first time in IIT's history the exam got cancelled. I said, what man, God doesn't want me to go there, right? So I'd given a very nice examination. People walked out in 15 minutes. Chemistry was super tough. As you guys have given, I'm sure you guys have given your IIT examinations. You know, sometimes it can just throw a googly at you. It threw a googly at everyone but me because I was very good at chemistry and it turned out to be a very difficult chemistry paper. I sat down and I cracked the paper. I said, boss, is bar to ekdam top 100 mein aane ka. Exam got cancelled. And then my classes started again second year. So, you know, the exam was reconvened. Then I went and gave the exam again, chak maar ke. Main to dobara de ke aaunga. I have to prove myself that, you know, just because I didn't get through didn't mean that I wasn't as smart as the other folks. Right? It was something I had to prove to myself. I went and gave the examination again, got some random 1700 or something rank, right? And 1700 rank back then went ISM Dhanbad, Petroleum Engineering, because in 97 ISM was through IIT. And I would have got to the same place where I had already been studying for the last 1 year. So then that's where, you know, so for a youngster, for someone who was barely, not even 20, I was 18, 19, for me, the universe gave me a signal. Listen, boss, पहुंचोगे तो वहीं जहाँ पहुंचना है. 96 में if I had not, you know, if I'd given up, I'd said एक साल फिर से पढ़ाई करूँगा, फिर से दूँगा. 97, I would have given the exam without something in my back pocket. I would have ended up getting petroleum engineering at ISM Dhanbad 1 year later. Right. So that said, you know, what does that teach someone like you guys who are in the same spot 25 years later? Right? World has changed a lot, but it hasn't changed that much. Some things change, some things don't change. And careers are not linear, and that's the part which is in the green at the bottom, which is what you will figure out time and again in your lives, that careers are not linear, and some bad news is actually good news. Right? So the bad news there for me in 96, I didn't get into IIT. That was a good news, because many years later, when I got into IIM Bangalore, and when I was passing out of IIM Bangalore, right, pretty much everyone in the batch was IIT Delhi, IIT Kanpur, computer science, or some IIT or the other. Some 80% of the batch were engineers from IIT and from one of the top branches, right? So guess what would a McKinsey or a BCG or an investment bank look for? Differentiation, as in, give me someone who knows something different, right? Give me someone who knows something different from everyone else who's out there. And that turned out to be me, because ISM Dhanbad, petroleum engineer, worked in the oil industry. I came and said, well, my profile is different. I can speak good English. I can do good maths. And by the way, I'm from ISM Dhanbad. I'm not from IIT, and I've studied earth sciences. You know, the world is going through an energy security issue. You know, there are wars all around. Guess who can tell you what's going on, right? The world economy largely depends on oil and gas. And I could be the one who could tell them about what the hell is going on. The country was going from administered pricing to free market pricing. So hey, that was some bad news back then, but it was really good news back in IIM Bangalore. In IIM Bangalore, you know, in day zero, in my batch, there were 6 people who got through. Day zero is a big deal in IIMs, right? In IIMs, what happens is all the big firms, the consults, the McKinseys and the BCGs, the investment banks, they come in on day zero. Summer placement is even more tough, right? There were 200 odd people in my batch. And out of 200 people, there were some 6 people who were selected in summers of 2002. Because 2002 still was suffering. And summers is not so. And a lot of you guys would be under pressure for your summers. I'll talk about engineering summers as well after I talk about MBA summers. And I see we have time. So remember, summers is a big deal for us. It's not a big deal for the organizations, right? Because they have employees who have worked 15 years and are not contributing. They don't really expect an engineering college student to contribute to their bottom line or something really meaningful in 2 months' time. At times, they don't even have a good problem definition of what is it that they want the guys to do. Right? So, but as college students, we didn't really know summers is not a big deal. It was so bad कि IIM Bangalore का summers में, when I got through, day zero में 6 लोग हुए. One of them was me in an investment bank, which I never ended up taking as a profession. Then there was day 1, there was day 2, there was day 3. So there's a lot of people who keep getting into their placements. At the end of day 3, there was a big party going on one of the floors. You guys have seen 3 Idiots movies, right? 3 Idiots movie, there's this, it's shot in IIM Bangalore. So it's shot in our campus. It's interestingly shot around the same place where I used to live. So there was a big party going on my floor. Everybody had got placed. A couple of us were on day 0. And then, next morning we find out that one of the guys in the basement floor had committed suicide and he was dead for the last 2 days and none of us knew. Right? None of us knew. Why did he commit suicide? Because everybody who shows up at IIM is a smart kid, right? Everybody has been a topper throughout. Right? They've been, captain of house captain ho gaya, 90% plus, everything that you think is big success in life. All of the guys are like that only. Because like 400,000 people will give an exam and 400 will come in. All the 400 will have exactly the same profiles. Then you have to differentiate. Right? Whatever you've done in the past doesn't really matter. You'll have to differentiate. And that differentiation ka pressure puts so much pressure on kids that kids start committing suicide, which is just not acceptable, right? Because your careers are again not linear. Nobody cares. Nobody cares 2 years down the line. You yourself won't care. Where did you do your summers, right? What did you do in your summers? Possibly, right? That depends on you. Because you drive your career. You'll figure out what you want to learn. What you learn is useful. Where you do your summers depends a lot on who did your problem statement. For me, I did my summers in HSBC, investment bank, big deal. My assignment manager didn't know what he wanted to do out of me. He said, they've given me a smart kid. I don't really know what to do with a smart kid. Me anything to do. So I was running his business for him for 2 months. 2 months later, I went back. They said, what kind of assignment you did? One of my friends went to London and did investment banking. The other guy went to US and he did some really crazy stuff. Got paid a lot of money. I ran a business for 2 months and I came back. Didn't really learn anything. Didn't really get a job. No pre-placement offer, all of that. But I learned how to run a business. That came in very useful later on. Much later on. Sometimes 10 years later on. That came in very useful. But you learn something, right? So don't go for summers and don't take pressure that if you've got into a summer. Again, I'll give you an engineering college example. Right? Back in ISM, 97, 98, 99, one of these years was a really bad year. So, no good company was coming for campus. ONGC used to come. ONGC was also not coming. And all of us were like, unemployed hi jayenge lagta hai. Why did we join petroleum engineering? All of that. A bunch of guys went to give Infosys ka examination, and I'll take you through my LinkedIn ka snapshot of the people from that time. A bunch of guys just completely moved over to IT because the oil companies didn't come on time, right? So me and one of my friends, we became very lucky and we got through our summers which was back then in 99, it was HLS Asia, Halliburton Logging Services Asia, HLS Asia Private Limited. Good company, was being run very professionally. I still remember the names of the guys. One of the guys I'm still in touch with, he was a college senior. So first time, I got on a flight. I've never seen the inside of an airport. We grew up in a small town, obviously, and never really gotten on a flight. So went to the airport, got on a flight from Calcutta to Dibrugarh. I think it was Dibrugarh. Yeah, so Calcutta to Dibrugarh. We were taken to a hotel. I'd never really gone inside a hotel and eaten. You were never given pocket money to go into a 5-star hotel, 3-star hotel, 2-star hotel, any star hotel to eat. As in when you were college, you guys, are the result of a generation of parents who really worked hard and got some more money than our parents had a couple of generations or a generation back, right? So this is not a big deal, but back then it was a big deal to get into a hotel and get good food. So got off the flight, got into a hotel, सीधे जा करके room service में order किया. What did I have? Sandwich, because that's the only thing I knew. Get me some really nice burger, some sandwich. वो order किया तब तक call आ गया base से, Halliburton. बस बेस पे आ जाओ. So ठीक है, बेस पे आ जाता है. That was my summers, right? It was 2 weeks I had to spend there. So left my food aside, ran to the base, and there were some really dirty coveralls hanging from the hook there. Some really dirty shoes, all used. Right? So I was told, pick a coverall that fits you, put on those shoes, come into the workshop. And there's this Hippo. Hippo was what they call the logging unit. Logging units are really big trucks. Imagine a big truck if you guys haven't seen one. And there was a puncture on one of the tires. They said, go and jack it up so that we can change the tire. I said, what? I studied in IISM Dhanbad. I'm a topper. I'm a gold medalist in all these sports. I've got through summers because of my wonderful resume, and they will get me to change the puncture on a tire. Okay, the first thing is ego crushing. Right? Oh, you are the junior-most of the junior-most guys on the workshop. Obviously, you will be the one who will be doing the tire changing. No ego. There is nothing, no profile. On a workshop, everybody's an equal, right? So I go in there under the truck. I've never changed the tire even on a car, right? So that Stepney change kiya tha zyada se zyada ek Bajaj scooter ka. I went and for half an hour I was turning that jack wala wheel. Half an hour later, little bit 1 inch the truck moved up. So we changed the tire. I got out 2.5 hours in the workshop. Thought, okay, now ho gaya, ab jate hain, because I had traveled all day and I had got into that workshop. I never traveled so much in my life. I traveled all there. That was the summer. The summers was not about teaching me anything technical. The summers was about checking how could I deal with pressure. I didn't deal with pressure very well. After a week, I said, listen, so, the next job there was painting a tank. Then I was cleaning some guns which were loaded with RDX because that was the job, it was exploding and producing oil. They were on a field job. So for a week, I did the same thing. It was a royal princely salary of 34,000 rupees per month if I got through a pre-placement offer. And in my wisdom, then after a week, I said, listen, I do know that after I graduate, I want to do an MBA. I don't think if I do this job, I'll be able to prepare for an MBA. So I told the base manager that, listen, I don't think I want to do this because I don't think I want to do this job when I graduate. So in the summers, you always have the option of choice, right? Remember, whenever you're looking for a job, the choice is on both sides, on the side of the company and on the side of the student. Because you are the only one who knows what you want to do in your life and what you're going to do, or the career that you're getting or the job that you're picking up. Does it fit in? Does it really fit in with the kind of job that you want to do? So, long story short, that back then, when I came back, obviously I had, 2 weeks summers, 1 week mein khatam karke I got back. Clearly, I was not going to get a PPO. Then Schlumberger came into campus. That was the biggest job, And they said, okay, pre-placement. So you didn't get a pre-placement from Halliburton, but really nice. You managed to get at least a summers. Only 2 of you got it. So directly in the shortlist. Then the interviews were happening. And then the interviews, the guys were talking to me. And then my big mouth started saying a lot of big things. They said, boss, तुम्हें ले लिया, तुम तो 2 साल में छोड़ के MBA करने चले जाओगे. You're not going to stay with us. You'll possibly be the CEO of some company somewhere. But you're definitely not going to say Schlumberger. Wiser words weren't spoken. There was some old guy my batchmates still remember that phrase, right? So 22 years later or 23 years later, when I did end up becoming the first CEO from the batch, they said, well, somebody who came to hire you told the same thing 20 years or 20 plus years back. Boss, you're not going to stay doing this work. You're possibly, you'll be doing other managerial stuff. I didn't see it. I was just speaking a lot, but I was at least a little bit clear what I wanted to do with my life, and it was definitely not painting tanks, and that's a lot of fun as well, and I've done that. But at that point of time, I didn't see myself doing it. But at that point of time, there weren't really a lot of career choices as well. But then you need to know what you want to do with your life. Sometimes it's a choice by elimination. Sometimes you know what you don't want to do with your life, right? So. Anyway, I won't talk about a lot of stuff, but over the last 15 years, a lot of myths about how careers are built have been busted. And I want to point out this, this round circle gentleman in the photograph out here. That is me. And that was, me winning some random big award back in 2009 when I joined GE. That was my second job post MBA, right? And GE back then was what Apple right now is. People from Harvard, they interned for a year so that they would get into the program that I got in, which was Experience Commercial Leadership Program, ECLP. And I'll show you a link of the ECLP alumni in GE. So GE was known as a CEO factory back in the 2000s. And ECLP was known as a CEO factory within GE. So the bunch of guys who got in, they got into really fancy roles. The people behind me were Jeff Immelt and Beth Comstock. They were the biggest leaders that GE had, right? Jeff was the CEO and Beth was the chief marketing officer. Both were disgracefully dismissed from service around 5-6 years down the line. They had tremendous past behind them. They had been highly successful in their careers. You would read up about them, you'll find out about them, right? So, Jeff was a Harvard graduate from the early 1980s. He almost ran GE to the ground. Although he took GE out of the financial crisis of 2009 and 10, Beth Comstock was the chief marketing officer who was responsible for big campaigns like Eco-Imagination and a lot of big stuff. Jeff was the one who came up with GE Digital as a concept. GE Digital was a GE business focused on artificial intelligence, on something, the metaverse, predictive intelligence, predictive analytics, things which were 10 years ahead of their time. We were looking at additive manufacturing, some really fancy rocket sciencey stuff in the early 2010s. But he did it ahead of time. That meant that financially we suffered as an organization. He took the hit and he was fired, right? Fired disgracefully after a long and successful career. So, sometimes good news is bad news, right? And sometimes bad news is good news. And you could do all the right things and you could still be kicked out of your job. And history will be kind to you, but the present would not be very kind to you. the thing is, you can't take it to heart. None of the super successful guys should let success get to their head. One of the most successful guys in my batch at IIM Bangalore was a guy, and without naming him, is a guy who set up a business from scratch. He bought a 200 crore house in Delhi, in Johor Bahru. Right? He was in the liquor wholesale business, became a bit too powerful, a bit too strong, and right now is in the Tihar jail. Right? Because at some point of time, he let the boundaries blur, right, between right and wrong. So sometimes the cost of success, people pay with their integrity, which makes them successful in the short run, right? But in the long run, you end up in jail. Your family and your life is screwed. Maybe not. Maybe later on he ends up in politics. Who knows? But for all said, as the career as an IIM grad doing a great job in the world, that got screwed. Again, another lesson for someone who's at the beginning and the early stages of a career. Career is a long run. It is a very, very long run, right? So I graduated in 2000. I have no intention of retiring before 2040. So what happened in my performance appraisal in 2008 might bother me in 2009, 2010. I won't even remember about it right now, right? I would definitely not remember about it when I'm presenting to the board of my company in 2030. And I would still have 10 years of my career left ahead of me. Right? But if I had swindled some money in 2010 and made a quick buck on the side in one of the jobs I was doing, right, and there was a police complaint and I spent a few days in jail, nobody would let me forget that for the next 30 years. Your career is screwed. So no matter what you do, integrity, honesty, and being on the right side of things is something which is a non-negotiable when you're trying to build your career, especially at the early stage of your career. At the early stage of your career, there'll be a lot of things which seem very lucrative. Ye thoda sa hi to gabad hai, it doesn't really seem that bad. What if we do this? What if I join a startup and which is, startups are good places to work in, right? Or what if I join a startup which is, bending a few rules? They're putting me on the board of directors. They're just getting me to sign a few documents here and there. Doesn't really matter. I won't go to jail. Well, you will go to jail, right? So you join a company, you do your due diligence. A company will never hire you unless they have done a due diligence on you. A company will never even. They have interviewed like 45 other candidates for that job. Right? They would go through your resume. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. So why would you go and work for a company where you've not done your due diligence? Why would you go and work for a sector where you've not done your due diligence? So at the early stage of your career, one of the things you need to figure out is, what do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And am I doing the right thing? As in, what I am going to do now, will it come back to haunt me 25 years down the line, right? The tattoo that I'm planning to get on my neck, which looks very cool now, will it look equally cool when I'm 50? And when I'm applying for the position of a CEO of a company and, they look at me and say, guy, it's still a 20-year-old. Right? Will it still look cool? Possibly not. So whatever you do at this point of time in your early careers, don't let a moment of stupidity ruin your long-term career. Right? Again, advice coming from someone who's been there 25 years back, seen a few careers really flourish, seen a few careers really go off track. So anyway, last 15 years at GE, very fancy, GE, Baker Hughes, as in, the world has changed, which you guys will evolve into the changed world, so you won't really know what the world was before that. But a few things you should remember, right? It's not about where you do your job, but does your job get the required visibility? Right? A lot of people don't want to work in small towns. So in my organization, there's, we have offices all over the world, fancy places. Florence, Houston, there's an office in Paris, there's offices in London. But then sometimes the work gets done in smaller cities because oil and gas has fancy places that it wants to be found in. Manufacturing happens in fancy places. The people whose careers really progress in the long run, they decide to base themselves in the location where the work is, where the visibility is, right? Where the work actually gets done, not at the headquarters. You can have all the visibility you want, but if you're not doing the work, then you have the wrong visibility, right? People say that, ye bas bhaap marta hai, baat banata hai, karta kuch nahi. So figure out the work before you pick the location. And this again also comes in handy when you're deciding your summers or your final placements. Everybody wants to go and do a summers in a fancy location. Bombay में जाके करते हैं, दिल्ली में करेंगे, या जो बाहर में मिल रहा है, बाहर में मिल रहा है तो ये the entire world which is not based in India is based bahar. So does it really create a differentiation for you? Does it really create an advantage if you have done your summers abroad when you're trying to do your final jobs in India? Right? Where do you really want? So not location but visibility, not office but availability. Again, the point is when I came into India, I've been in various jobs. Finally, I've got a fancy office in the current job, really fancy. I fought very hard for it. Corner office, for the last 4 or 5 years, the biggest office on campus. I've not been there for more than 5 times in the last 3 years. Right? There's no point. Going to office is a waste of time because you spend so much time on the road. I'd rather spend my time with my team, with my clients. So it's not office, right? Not a fancy office, not a fancy office address, but how available you are, right? Again, the same thing on the summers, right? So when you guys go and do your summers or your final placements, it's not about being seen in office from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Right? But when somebody wants to reach you, are you available? When someone wants to reach out to you, sends you a text, sends you an email, sends you a WhatsApp message, are you available? Are you available all the time? Even that sends a wrong signal, right? So one of my friends, when he joined our company's office in London, he was available from morning 7 to night 9 o'clock. And the guys then had to give him a dressing down that, listen, because of you, everybody's habit will go bad. Right? 5 o'clock is when your family time starts. So go home. Right? Don't stay here till 10 because everybody will then be expected to stay till 10. And which is correct, right? People burn out. People burn themselves out by working too hard. Then they're of no use to the organization. I had someone in my team who was working so hard that he got a stroke. And then for 2 years, he couldn't work. They're still carrying him because it was unfair to fire him. He had a stroke because he was working too hard. Don't get a stroke. Don't work too hard. Work as much as can sustain you. End of the day, it's all about trying to have some fun, generate some happiness for yourself, for your family, for your friends. So, and it's not about your role, but your goal. Again, it sounds very cliche-ish, but I read about some really nice article. There's a very nice business publication that says, a guy was very happy. They got the job of customer front impression manager, and they were really excited coming out of B school, getting customer first impression manager role. And guess what the job was? Customer first impression manager was a receptionist. Right? The first person you see when you get into the office. What was your goal, right? To get a very fancy designation or to do something else? If you're not clear about your goal, what do you really want to do? You might end up with a very fancy designation which means nothing. And sometimes it also becomes a bane, right? It's a success curse. So, a lot of companies right now, startups, small companies funded by private equity, by friends and family rounds, they want to hire a lot of people. People won't join as assistant to the regional associate. But if they call you vice president of innovation strategy, you join. Right? You spend 2 years as vice president of innovation and strategy in some random startup. Then try going out to the market and getting a job. People would say you're overqualified. We can't give a job to someone who was a VP. That becomes it becomes a bane. It becomes a curse. So some good news is bad news, and some bad news is good news. Do your due diligence. When you're joining a company, is your role, the name they call the role, is it really that role? Right? What is the goal? What is it that job does? काम क्या है? बोलते क्या से ज़्यादा important है काम क्या है? What do you get to learn? What do you get to do? And remember always that you've not really worked, but when you work, you don't really have one boss. Those days are gone. Then when you have one boss, the entire organization around and above you at times is your boss. It's a matrix. The HR manager is your boss. The production manager is your boss. The site manager, customer sales manager is your boss. Everybody is your boss eventually. So you just can't make one person happy. Do a good job. Talk about the good job. Make sure everybody is aware what you're doing. Then you keep the matrix happy. You have to start learning to manage the matrix, right? You have to start learning to manage the matrix. And you can figure out examples in sports, in media, in Bollywood. You figure out a lot of stakeholders who need to be kept happy at the same point of time. Just can't simply be your boss. And not effort but results, right? And this is something which I use a lot with my own team at times. And I'll stop after this. I'll take questions. But off-campus placements. I created all this summer for off-campus placement. I'll spend some time on that. And then I'll take questions. So, not effort but results, right? I don't know if anybody remembers. You guys are fresh out of school, so you would remember what's the formula of work, right? I'm sure somebody would remember the formula of work, if not everybody. Right? Can someone want to take a stab at that? What is the formula of work?
Is anyone interested to answer? Yes, there's a chat in the chat.
No, chalega, okay. So I'm sure a lot of people would know. F into S, correct. So somebody has already put it. Force into distance, right? So if there is a big rock in the middle of the room and you come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and start pushing that rock, leave at 5 o'clock in the evening and that rock hasn't moved, you've done a lot of effort, right? Have you really done any work? You haven't done any work, even by the definition of work, right? You can only say that you've done work when you move something, when something gets done. And in the workplace, whether it's summers, whether it's your full-time job, whether it's your job before your retirement, it's always true. Nobody cares about your effort. Sometimes they do, well done, good job, peeth pe thapthapat milega, but what really people are bothered about, at least what your CEO or your country head or your big bosses are bothered about is, do you get some results? He played really well. Virat Kohli might play really, really well, but India loses. Who cares? It's results. Right? Eventually, do you move something? When you work on something, do you move something? Do you get some results? Do you go the distance? Do you take the problem some distance so that it gets to a solution? Think about that when you go around pushing yourself from summers. And then again, change how you look at your career prospects. Because Anupam told me that you guys want to hear about how do you chase companies for off-campus hiring. Just open up your mind. Open up your mind and think about the kind of people who would be looking for people like you. Who goes to a campus? Someone who has a campus recruitment policy, right? Someone who has a budget to fly 3 people into Delhi or into Bombay and get into a college and interview, spare an HR manager, because they won't just go to one college. They will have a campus hiring program. So 1 month, they will need to spare a few HR people, a few business leaders, spend tons of money to do what? To hire freshers. Right? Freshers don't really make any impact unless you're in a field role, right? Unless you're in a field role where you're a head count, whether either you're doing programming or you're moving stuff around. You don't really add value for the first couple of years at least. Couple of years down the line, people start adding tremendous value. Some people start adding value in the first 6 months, but people don't go for summers. People don't go for final placements to campuses. They just wait for someone else to do that, and 1 year down the line, they pick up someone with experience. Because some of the best students, they screw up in the first year. They're not the people you want to hire. Some of the worst students, they shine when they get to do some real work, right? Some of the most successful people in my batch are people who barely passed either my engineering college in ISM or MBA in IIM Bangalore. Some of the best performing candidates right now in the industry are people who barely managed to pass. They're shown when they were given some work. So a lot of people go and hire from the market, right? So what do you do, right? We do campus now. One of the things which one of my, seniors at GE said 10 years after I'd started working is, nobody owes you a career. Nobody owes you a career. You can blame your parents all you want. You can blame your teachers, your professors. You can blame your class teacher. You can blame your friends for screwing your career. Nobody owes you a career, right? You yourself owe you a career. You owe your own success to yourself. Nobody else will do it for you. Nobody will find a good company, bring it to your table, tell them that, Shashank is a great candidate, take him and make him CEO in 10 years or make him director in 15 years or whatever. Nobody's going to do that. You have to find the company. You have to create a resume that they're interested in. Resume is just, I don't know of a better example. I should think of a better example. A resume is someone that just gives you a seat on the table. Right? It's like going on a speed date. Getting a speed date is a resume. Right? But after that, if you screw up, nobody's going to have chat with you again. So you make a fancy 10-page resume in which you said I was house captain in the 4th class and I won long jump in 5th grade, and then when I was in 7th grade, when my school was going to an inter-school tournament in Raigad, I really went ahead of the group and then I, took them out on a parade. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? You show leadership. Just talk about it in a single line somewhere on the resume. They know that you're a leader. You've gone out of your way, set up a movie club, you've done AI, ML, some certification, something that validates that you've done something. That's something which might get you differentiated. Remember, I kept talking about differentiation at the earlier stage. And then, present yourself to the company. Which company? Think about it, right? So oil and gas industry, just taking oil and gas upstream as an example. This is what I've done, right? So when you think oil and gas upstream, as a student, I didn't even know. I would swear I didn't know more than 4 companies on this list, right? But right now, operating companies, ONGC, Oil, Vedanta, Shell, this is what possibly a lot of you would know. And then you start looking around, you say HOEC is hiring people, Antilopus is hiring people, Invenire Energy is hiring people, Adani has got a E&P arm. You start making a list, you go to Director General of Hydrocarbons website, you say, oh, there are 15 operating companies in India. I didn't even know. And then you say, why just India? Let's look at what are the companies around. So let's look at the companies operating in Australia. You say, oh shit, there are 25 operating companies in Australia. Do they hire Indians? And then you go to LinkedIn and go to your webpage and see, oh, Arrow Energy, there are 25 Indians. And 3 of these guys are from my town. I can actually reach out to them. LinkedIn, brilliant place, right? But then LinkedIn is also a bane, right? So on my LinkedIn, I have 10,500 contacts. I just accept any invitation request. And my CEO once told me, either you really filter at the time of accepting friend requests or you accept everything that comes your way. You can't start filtering midway. Now I've got so many people on my LinkedIn. You can imagine that every day there'll be at least 50 job applications, right? At least, without exaggerating. Right? And they will be very nicely written 2-page job applications with 3 attachments, and I really want a job in Baker Hughes. Can you please recommend me to this position? I would definitely love to do that, but why? How? There are 50 people asking me to do the same thing every single day. But then there are some who come and say, there is a position of data analyst in Middle East in this company, and I see you are connected to some Robin Sharma, who is the hiring manager. Can you please recommend him or recommend me to him? I have worked with X person that you knew in the past. Now, that's a very specific request. Now, if I get to that request in the spam, which spams my inbox, if I get to that request, then I'll definitely be able to do something about it. So make your ask very specific. When you're reaching out to these companies, remember, anyone you reach out to possibly is spammed by requests from educational institutes, standalone students, people out of jobs, former employees, people from competition, references from their own employees, and they are overwhelmed with amount of people, amount of data, and you would unfortunately be at the bottom of the pile because, fresh grads are fresh grads. You don't really have a lot to talk about unless you have a lot to talk about. So unless you have, set up your own startup or designed your own smart car, some AI-based chatbot, or designed a fast car, something really that stands out, you're all going to be treated similarly, right? So nobody would give you an advantage or a disadvantage over someone else. You'll have to go through the grind. The grind here is finding a company that doesn't have these 500 applications, right? So for example, you look at product selling companies, look at the products in oil and gas industry. Go to an oil and gas plant and look at the things those guys have installed, right? So, close to Delhi, where would you go? You go to Vedanta. Vedanta's, you could go on a field trip to Barmer, where they have their facility. You see there are firefighting systems. You see there are valves. You see there are heat exchangers. You see there are separators, Then look at the manufacturers of separators. You see there are 4 manufacturers of separators in the country. And a lot of them actually do work for a German company. And you figure out, oh shit, that German company is a $3 billion company. Do you think that those guys need employees? Do you think that those guys need talent? Of course they do. In Europe, in Australia, in North America, in Canada, they don't have enough petroleum engineers. They don't even have enough engineers. Right? So, and they don't know about you. Nobody will go and tell them about you. You go and tell them about yourself. That's what you do. Say, well, I'm an engineer. I'm graduating in this year. I've done these projects. I know X, Y, Z about your product. If I join with the right training in 6 months' time, I would be contributing to your company in a significant way. I'm willing to work in India. I see you have already got an installed base in India with a customer. I can help you grow your business here. Something in it for them. What is in it for me? Everybody who's hiring a student would try and find out, there are 500 people who reach out to me. What is in it for me if I get to this guy? Right? So I say, well, I bring this specific skill sets to you. Look for the right company, right? So drilling equipment, production equipment, right? Think about all the production equipment. There's tons of it, which you'll read about. If you're in first, second, third year, you possibly haven't read about it yet. But when you start reading about it, start questioning, pipe, it goes through pipe. Pipe is being manufactured by some really big companies, right? Why can't you go and work for a pipe mill? Right? They pay good salaries. You don't really expect to be paid the revenue of the company. You get to be paid a decent amount of salaries in lakhs, right? 25-30 lakh, 35 lakh, koi de de, you'll be more than happy, right? 50 lakh, some of these guys will pay you some really good salaries. For freshers, if you do some additional side mein padhai, big data, artificial intelligence, some really fancy stuff that everybody is talking about, they'll be more than happy to take you. And service provider companies, they make a huge lumbaje. They have really set processes to try and break the process, get in off campus. Not easy unless you have experience. Right? Freshers off campus won't work out in a lot of these big companies. But then you go to a smaller company, let's say, not small, but smaller, right? Someone like an X-Pro, right? They don't have a campus program in India. Where you go to the country head and tell, well, our campus has some really good students, and if you want some production engineers, here we are. You go to a drilling rig manufacturer, you go and say, you go to someone who is doing EPC projects, right? EPC projects is, engineering, procurement, and construction. It's when someone executes a large project turnkey, then they call it an EPC project, right? So an L&T. L&T would build a plant for ONGC on a turnkey basis, or McDermott. They're doing a $1.5 billion project execution for ONGC. They're doing $1 billion project execution for Reliance. $1 billion is a lot of money. For that, they will hire 500 people, right, to execute that for the first 3 years. They would desperately be out in the market looking for talent. As in, I know the HR managers of a lot of these companies, and they would come and say, hey, we are looking for 50 electronics engineers or instrumentation engineers. Any engineer would work as long as they are willing to work on this field. Freshers will do, because we'll give them the required training. But then who will reach out to them? Then somebody has to keep a track of the companies which have won big projects. Are they hiring for those big projects? So, who will do that? It is typically the students who themselves do it, right? So you go and do that, you possibly get into that, that shortlist or that radar by yourself. So that's it. So, there's a bunch of companies listed here. I've actually been speaking nonstop for the last 1 hour, so I'll just stop and I'll take some questions. There's always more than you can see. I'll take a few questions.
Thank you very much for the informative slides, sir. So now we have some questions from the host round. I have prepared some questions, sir.
Sure.
Sir, so first question is, you know that RGIPT is an institute of national importance. The students there are IIT advanced qualified with decent ranks, which shows that they are hardworking and intelligent. What may be the reasons that even after having such good brain and a CV full of achievements, they are not getting jobs and internships in the big names?
So if you look out in the market, what are the big names doing right now? Schlumberger has possibly laid off. They have laid off thousands of people, thousands of experienced people across all locations in the world, right? When they're laying off people with proven track record and work experience, how come they'll come and hire freshers? You hire freshers when the time is good, right? When you're building for the future. You fire people when the time is bad, when you're just trying to survive. Because of the adverse economic circumstances right now, the big names won't hire. Big names won't come out to the campus. See, Institute of National Importance is a very good thing, right? And it should make you guys feel very proud that you're studying in a worthwhile place, you have good professors. Institute of National Importance means that you'll get some good knowledge. I don't think any institute guarantees you a job. And goes back to what I was saying earlier. Nobody owes you a career. Not the institute, not the nation. You yourself owe you a career, right? So if you reach out to an organization which is open to take off-campus hiring, there is no point again beating your head against a wall. Again, it goes back to the example of trying to push a rock which doesn't move, right? So if an organization has a campus recruitment program and is not going for it, it will not take off-campus people, especially. Then look for people who do not have a campus hiring program, who are open to hiring off campus. Look for people. Again, this goes back to being proactive rather than reactive. कि भाई मैं तो बड़ा important हूँ, तो लोग मेरे पास क्यों नहीं आते? Rather than कि वो उसके पास में इतना सारा काम है and he needs 500 people and I'm telling him I'm going to give him 50 people, why is he saying no? Has that happened? If that has not happened, you have to flip the question around and ask yourself this question. Am I going to the right people? Or am I waiting for people to come to me? Nobody will come to you. they're going through a tough time themselves.
That was really eye-opening, sir. The next question, sir, is how to target private oil and gas company to conduct internship drives in our college?
So that's a good one, right? So internship drive ke liye, again, identify the private oil and gas company. Right? So given you a format, how do you go and identify the companies, product providers, technology providers, service providers, engineering providers? List of, just do a couple of facility visits and start noting down the names. You'll have name tags on all of those equipments. Kisne supply kara, kisne install kara, kaun servicing kara. List down all of those companies, right? Prepare a good list. As in, I don't know if you must have a place com, right? But in your placement committee, you would have the list of some of the biggest companies. Start reaching out to some of these companies which you don't even go out to, right? Fresh companies which are fresh to you. So you are fresh to them and they are fresh to you, right? And then, that is one way. The other way is typically to use industry associations, just like you have used EAGE for today's talk. I have a lot of affinity to SPE, so I go and speak on a lot of SPE forums. Attach your campus. I don't know if your campus is attached to a SPE section, right? Your campus should be attached to the SPE Delhi section. So what happens is the 20, 30, 40 odd companies which are attached to the SPE Delhi section, they will come to know about your chapter. So set up a student chapter of Society of Petroleum Engineers, and you don't really have to be a petroleum engineer.
There, sir.
It's already there, right? So which section are you attached with?
SP RGIPT student chapter is there. Which section? I don't have the idea, sir.
Delhi, sir.
Fine. Delhi, correct? So then,
Delhi.
Get to the Delhi section ka secretary and chairperson, right? And, they typically in their board have a position. So I am the secretary of the SPE Mumbai section, and on my board is one guy who is the faculty, so a very senior guy who was an ex-president of Reliance. He's the faculty coordinator within the board, and there is one person who is the SPE Young Professionals coordinator, and there is another person who does the SPE, mentorship. He is the SPE mentorship chair. Get to these three people for Delhi, and I know these guys are very active, and tell them that, listen, we want to get internships in the companies. He'll do exactly what I'm doing with you today. He'll structure the companies. He'll tell you a list of companies which have got some really big projects, and then they will get you. Sometimes these internships end up in jobs. So first year, second year internship, again, don't take a lot of load for it. It doesn't really, in the long run, it doesn't really matter. I know institutes want that for credit. Thoda sa pressure hota hai, but if I'm a small company and I'm taking you as an intern for 2 months, I'll only do it if I have some job that I can give you that you can complete in 2 months. Right? So don't really take a lot of stress if people say no. A lot of people will say no. Few people will say yes. Few people will say yes because for 2 months you might actually do something useful. Think of a project that you can do in 2 months and then offer those internship projects. And you're offering interns right now. And my paas 25 engineers in the Institute of National Importance. But then wo 25 engineer ke saath saath mein bolo, we can do these kind of projects, right? You can do inventory optimization, you can do some automation of manufacturing, you can do asset integrity management software development, or whatever it is. And then figure out what company you're going to and what is the kind of project they can look at, and give them a 2-month project that you guys can do, right? They'll never say no. Trust me, nobody likes to say no to something which is coming cheap with a bunch of talented people, even if it's a first, second year intern. Right? So just flip the question that you're asking me.
Okay, sir. That was really informative. Sir, third question is, we have personally contact to HRs of many reputed companies in the energy domain. They said they have stopped recruiting off campus. There needs to be an internship drive from that company in that college to be eligible for PPOs and placements. Scenario is very troublesome for students of RGIPT because, sir, what are your views and solutions on this? I guess that was somewhat related. Yes, same questions. Yes, sir.
So basically, it's the same question which I was telling you earlier also.
Yeah.
Right? So again,
yes,
look at the list of companies. It keeps going back to you have to own this, right? So there are people who will be looking for interns, right? So what I would say is look out for companies who are looking for people. The best place to look at is someone who has work. Right? Again, imagine from the point of view of the company. If they have work that they are trying to execute, all of these people are trying to hire. Right? So I'll give you an example in India. Technip FMC is one company, One Subsea, Schlumberger is another company. Technip FMC has not won a job in India in the last 10 years. Right? It's a very big company. If you want to go and look for a job with them, they'll possibly not give you anything. And on the other hand, L&T Hydrocarbon has won everything in the last 2 years. Right? They're pretty much single bidders in everything that comes their way. They fired a lot of people 2 years back. So now they're short of staff to execute the kind of work that they're getting. They would be looking at interns, they would be looking at full-time employees. So, have a scoring criteria for the companies that you're going out to. And don't just, you should be selective here, is what I would say. Don't put all your effort or similar amount of effort after all the companies. If there's a company which is going through a tough time. So Halliburton, for example. Right? Halliburton is going through a tough time in India. And if you go and try and look for an internship with them, they'll possibly not be able to help you. L&T, as I said, Siva was asking which company is it. L&T has won a lot of work recently. They'll possibly, Tata Projects has won a lot of work. Right? Tata Projects has won tons of work. And, they would be in execution-related roles, they'll be looking at people. There's Emerson, which is doing a lot of work. Again, look at the grid as that I showed you. Product management, product supply companies, equipment supply companies, engineering technology supply, project management consulting firms, EPC firms. Look at people who've got work. Go to one of those industry publications like Petro Watch or, there's a bunch of them, right? So go for some industry publication in India which keeps track of which company is winning which jobs in India. If you can do that, right, and then go after the companies which are winning something, which are winning some big orders. Go after them, they'll always hire, right? What happens, the typical process is when a company wins a big job, they'll appoint a project director or a project manager who will run that project. And then he'll be asked to build up a team. Sometimes all the employees come from inside, but not everybody has a bench strength. So not everybody will have 100 people sitting on a bunch waiting to get started on, executing a job that they have won. They'll hire. They even work with interns, right? Because interns are easy, they're cheap. And you don't really pay a lot of money to interns, there's no PF or retirals or anything. And they're willing to work, they want to prove something because they want to get the job. So a lot of people will take interns. So go for companies which have one work, which have one business, and say what you're bringing to the table, right? Get a little bit more specific beyond, the institute is good. The companies are not hiring institutes. They're hiring students in specific for projects, right? So what can you bring for the project that you're going to do in 2 months? Right? So.
Okay, sir. Sir, yes, the next question is, it is usually suggested to hone up either the coding skills or the management skills to increase our chance of recruitment in any industry. Is it possible for a student to get a fair probability in the recruitment process in a big private company of oil and gas if he or she has put lots of effort into petroleum engineering only? It's very domain specific.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be, you have to be good at something, right? Hey, if you're good at petroleum engineering, you're good at a small subset, right? If you're good at coding, you're good in a much bigger subset. If you're a petroleum engineer who knows basic coding, that's very good, right? Then you can do a lot more work inside the organization. So, when you start acquiring skills, adjacent skills, make sure you're good at your core. Never let go of your core. And as I gave my own personal example, when I got my day zero summers in IIM Bangalore, that was because I was a petroleum engineer who could talk with confidence about the oil industry. Know your industry. Right? A lot of companies, they would like you to know the industry. Beyond just knowing, a blinkered vision of just one particular, I'm an expert in reservoir, but I don't know what drilling is. I'm an expert in production, but I don't know what reservoir is. So that shouldn't happen. You should understand the industry. You should understand the triggers of how a field is developed, how an FDP is written, a field development program is written, what are the timelines, where do you add value.
Okay, sir. Sir, the next question is, in oil and gas industry, what level of qualification is most preferred by the recruiters? Is it a BTech or a master's or even above?
Seriously, people don't care, right? But it's good if you have a BTech. It does come in handy. So the guy who is managing my biggest project in country right now, $600 million scope, He's managing a lot of really good engineers in engineer plus MBAs. That guy is a BCom graduate. Right? He learned project management for subsidiaries in Aberdeen because he was, he did some part of his studies in UK and then went ahead and became a project manager, and he learned on the job. So you learn on the job, right, eventually. But if you are doing in this current world, again, just bachelor's doesn't work. Being just a bachelor then becomes a limiting factor. You should do your master's some point sooner rather than later. An MBA is helpful in the long run. So again, this is possibly time when I can actually show you the profiles if I can. Still have a screen share, right? So I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Yeah. So let me show you. Yeah, you can see the profile, right? So, profile-wise, this is my batch of. So this is my LinkedIn profile, right? So there's 10,300 odd connections, and I'm just trying to screen and filter some people who make sense, right? So ISM Dhanbad 2K batch, that's my batch. If I scroll down, some of these guys are not really my batch, which I don't know how they managed to get into the group in LinkedIn, but then when I look at it, you'll see people are, so this is some student who might have just set it up, drilling engineer, field engineer, senior sales manager. This guy is indeed a batchmate. Advisor, well stimulation, senior engineer, director of technology, director at MasterCard, someone who's, moved on and did something else. Automation, Wells professional. Now, a lot of these guys who would still say engineer would be the ones who would have gone ahead and done MS. A lot of the guys who have, ground level. So a lot of the guys who moved into IT without doing a master's are still in IT, right? It's very difficult to switch out after that because you've given up your core, right? Your fungibility, as they call it. Once you build on your core and then you switch, you can move around anywhere. But when you switched at the very beginning, so you've done your engineering in petroleum and doing your job in IT, you're competing with a bunch of people who are in IT, right? So instead of being a partner in the firm, you're an associate and engagement manager in the firm. Nothing bad about that. All jobs are good jobs. You'll be a petroleum engineer, reservoir engineer, if you have continued being an engineer throughout without doing a master's. If you have not done your master's, then you will struggle in the downturn, which is what currently is, or which is what it was, right? When firing is happening 15 years into your career, if you have no differentiation besides being an engineer with 15 years of experience, you'll possibly be the one who has gone through the most churn, who's changed. So, if someone does an MBA, then they go on into marketing kind of jobs. Manohar is someone who's an SP Jain engineer who did very well, But if I look at the profile, a bunch of guys, and the bunch of guys who did the best typically are the bunch of guys who've done engineering plus MBA. The bunch of guys who are the most famous globally right now are the guys who did engineering plus MS and stayed in the US. So if you did engineering plus MS and stayed in the US, you gained worldwide popularity, you've done some really good work. So Pallav Sarma is one of the guys who was co-founder of Takius. There are some people who switched to AIML, some who have gone into cryptocurrency. A bunch of guys have gone to Amazon. But then that was just, my batch. For you guys, again, the reality could be something different, right? So it would not be about MS. And so I was just, I was also talking about your network is not just going to be the kind of people who you do your job, who you do your graduation with, right? Your network is also going to be people who you work with. So these are the people who did ECLP with me at GE. There's a different set of people. You'll see a completely different profile. A lot of these guys are directors or CEOs or CXOs, sales leaders, VPs. This is the same set of people, right? So eventually, these are people with 20 to 25 years of experience. But a bunch of these guys are engineers plus MBAs or commerce grads plus MBAs, right? Who have worked abroad. A bunch of these guys have also worked abroad. A bunch of these guys have also worked abroad. But a bunch of these guys are people with undergrad and postgrad abroad and work experience also abroad. So there's a lot of factors which start coming around. And again, I was telling you about the fact that I should stop sharing now, possibly. I was telling you about the fact that eventually it all depends on what is going on in the world around you. Right. So what is going on in the world around you? You need to know. Back then, when we were starting our careers, smartphones were going on. The internet was going on. Telecom revolution was starting. There was not even 2G. We're talking 5G technology, right? There's a huge amount of investment that has happened. It has happened in computers, in manufacturing. We missed that bus. Now, what is going on? Renewable energy. Everybody's talking about renewable energy. Bunch of projects. The Prime Minister wants electricity at each house. Urban mobility is happening. You have high-speed trains. Vertical lift-off. Drones which will transport humans. E-cars, e-vehicles, battery technology, mining. Back to mining, right? Mining of precious metals, which are really useful for battery technologies. Look around you and see what's going on, because you have to build a career for the next 40 years, right? What is the closest to your current career? You're a petroleum engineer. You learn about earth sciences. What is closest to earth sciences? Mining of precious metals. Doing a master's in possibly battery technologies, or energy storage management. Doing a master's in mobility. Convergence of petroleum technologies and mobility. Healthcare. Convergence with healthcare. You never know how it will come out useful, right? You don't have to be a doctor to work in healthcare. So look at the sunrise sectors, right? And then go to your masters. This is your first shot. You're building your base. Don't ignore your base. So the people who've not really done very well in their careers are people who switched paths very soon, right? So they did their engineering for 4 years and then uske turant baad usko chhod ke kahin aur chal gaye to compete with people who have been engineers in that particular field. But then also remember that AI, ML, big data, there are not enough people in the world who have done that. So if you are willing to burn the midnight oil and do certification courses, there's massive online open universities, unse padh ke aato, create a differentiated profile. But go ahead and do that extra education. But don't ignore your core. Your core, you're an earth science professional. That'll always be useful. Never forget that core.
Thank you very much, sir. Next question is, in oil and gas industry, what should be preferred by students while applying for private companies? The salary they provide initially or their current status in the market?
The salary doesn't matter at any point of time. So never look at the salary when you're applying. My first salary, you want to make a guess? My first salary was 9,000 rupees, right? I possibly pay my driver 4 times that amount right now, and it's barely been 20 plus years, right? And made no job choices because of salary. Salary comes, as Amir Khan says in the movie 3 Idiots, Kabil bano, kamyabi jhak maar ke piche aate. So Kabil bano, don't look at the salary being offered, look at the work being offered. Look at what you can bring to the table, how you can work, and then salary to apne aap aa jata. When time comes, salary will come.
Okay, sir. So the last question from host round is, now, sir, that is a situation-based question. Imagine you are a petroleum engineering student at RGIPT who is among the top rankers of the batch and has great knowledge of core, having international achievements. Unfortunately, and holding accountable position of responsibilities at student bodies, you are not recruited by ONGC in campus placement drive. No private giant visits your college. You worked hard in your JEE days, college days, you got the results, but your future is still not secure. What will be your specific approach towards this situation?
Very good. I'll be very sad, obviously, because when you are dealing with a setback, at that point of time, it does look like a setback. When you turn back and look at a setback. So, when you turn back and look at a setback, tab lagta hai ki yaar ye to learning experience. But when you're actually going through it, tab to lagta hai ki bahut bada setback hai. The life ends, what do you do? So, again, I don't have to be in an imaginary scenario. So in the real scenario, when I was graduating from my ISM days, I got a campus job with Oil India Limited, OIL, because that came before ONGC, and it was a good company. It used to be Burma Oil, and we were not. It was not as if we were spoiled for choice. So I told you about the other experiences. Halliburton पे तो खुद ही मैंने लात मार दिया था बेवकूफ़ी में. Islamabad वाले मुझे CEO बना रहे थे. So the 2 big companies were gone. There was Oil India. That was the only shot. So I got a job there. बात बना करके. And and then ONGC came. Everyone else got a job. And then when it came time for joining, they would never send me a joining letter, right? So April, my college shut down, and you guys are still in college, right? But when our college shut down in April, in May, June, July, I kept waiting for a joining letter. A joining letter never came. So our institute wrote back to them because back then, again, there was nothing. So I was very close to institute. I went back to the institute. You have to pick your own battle. So I went to Bombay to see my friends who were working for Reliance, and then went and appeared for an interview. They said, no, you're a fresher. You don't know anything about reservoir engineering. Which is true. I didn't know anything about reservoir engineering. I still don't. Right? So they kicked me out. So I was major एकदम depression में कि अभी क्या होगा, अभी तो life ही खत्म हो गया, पापा रिटायर कर जाएंगे, पैसे भी नहीं है, अभी मैं क्या करूँगा, MBA भी ठीक से नहीं दिया. The point is कि that is still not the end of life, right? Eventually things will work out. So the thing is, one thing you have to keep in mind is whatever is going on, it is not the end of the world. Right? Careers are long, very, very long, and they're not linear. Right? You might not have a job. For me, it took 6 months. I figured out there were protests because I was an outsider and I was getting a job in Assam. तो वहाँ पे उस समय उल्फा का मेजर जोर था. तो उल्फा they started making noise कि how can you get a Bihari boy in Assam, and there were some buns and all. So they were looking for excuses. They finally made me join in November. So there were 6 months which I spent in a lot of anxiety, and I didn't get any other job, by the way. So in the meantime, the friend, I remember I told you about a friend who used to study with me, who got through to IIT and I didn't. So, that guy came back from IIT Kharagpur, he was going for his MS in the US. So more pressure कि यार ये बैचमेंट लोग का तो इतना अच्छा हो गया, और the friends. So I got him to teach me some basics of computer science, continued applying for companies, did not let go of the company I was chasing, and then eventually I did get into oil, and then I left oil, and then the rest is history. But, in your case, if you're not getting a job right now, don't keep going after it, right? Build skills. Right? Don't take a horrible job just because you need a job on your resume. Build skills. Work for a startup. Set up something of your own if you have to. Right now, people are much more financially independent. There's a lot of scope in building applications, building apps, working for service providers, providing independent consultancy. There's a lot of stuff you can work out. Or else start applying for, master's programs or short-term programs in the UK based on scholarship, in the US based on scholarship. I know people from the Edinburgh University who have been camping in India trying to get more students from India. Edinburgh is a great university. University of Melbourne has been looking for students. All people, these guys are looking for students. Education loans are easy to get. When you're not getting a job, it's time to skill up. Right? If the market is bad, it's time to skill up. But trust me, the market is not bad right now. The market is good. The market is looking up because the oil prices have been high and they'll be stable at least for the next 4 or 5 years. If you're not getting something directly in the oil and gas industry, despite all of your hard work right now, start looking into the renewable energy, right? Solar, offshore wind, tidal. There's a bunch of these companies which are around, which are hiring. So widen your horizon. Don't give up. You'll get a lot of setbacks, but those setbacks are exactly what they are. They're setbacks, right? Could happen for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, 10 months maybe. Still doesn't matter in the long run of things, right? कोई नहीं पूछता ये इंजीनियरिंग के बाद 10 महीने तक जॉब क्यों मिलेगी. Even if you take a year off, nobody cares.